This week on ANN, delegates of the 2014 Annual Council approve a proposal to send to the 2015 General Conference session regarding women's ordination.
The Executive Committee also recommended editorial adjustments to the Church's 28 fundamental beliefs.
And Oakwood University officially becomes an institution for the Church in North America.
These stories and more coming up.
This is ANN, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks so much for joining us for this special 2014 Annual Council edition.
First in the news, delegates approved a proposal Tuesday to allow the 2015 General Conference session to decide whether world divisions should make the decision on the ordination of women. The proposal came with a vote of unanimous consent from General Conference division officers. During Annual Council, the question on whether to allow divisions to make provisions for women's ordination in their territory was presented to the Executive Committee. The proposal was discussed and accepted by a vote of 243 to 44.
Delegates also voted to accept a highly anticipated report by the Theology of Ordination Study Committee. The committee was established in 2012 to provide biblical research to develop a Seventh-day Adventist theology of ordination and to help the Church decide whether women should be ordained as ministers. The 106-member committee, which is made up of representatives from around the world, could not reach consensus. Instead, the report included 3 differing viewpoints on the subject, each offering biblical support for their position. One statement came out in favor of women's ordination and another statement expressed opposition. The task report also included a third statement, which suggests that regional leaders should make their own decision. The report was accepted by a vote of 275 to 11.
The Church's Executive Committee also voted to approve and endorse the consensus statement on the theology of ordination. The statement says, Seventh-day Adventists understand ordination in a biblical sense, as the action of the Church in publicly recognising those whom the Lord has called and equipped for local and global church ministry. The statement goes on to say, while ordination contributes to church order, it neither conveys special qualities to the persons ordained, nor introduces a kingly hierarchy within the faith community.
Delegates recommended this week to adjust the language of a key fundamental belief to emphasize that creation was a recent event that took place during 6 literal days. The decision came out of a growing concern about what church leaders claim is misinterpretation of the creation account within the denomination. The protocol to modify the fundamental belief on creation began at the 2010 General Conference session. Modifications for other beliefs included deleting redundancies, fixing punctuation, and scrapping marriage partners in favor of a man and a woman. The proposed revisions to the fundamental beliefs will be considered by delegates of the 2015 General Conference session for adoption into official church policy.
The denomination's only historically black university in the United States this week was shifted from being a General Conference institution to a university under the operation of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in North America. Formerly a General Conference entity, the reposition allows Oakwood University and the division to work more closely on a common mission. In an Oakwood University constituency session, the group voted to accept a request from the Oakwood Board of Trustees to transfer the university's constituency to the Church's North American division. Oakwood has operated as an institution of the denomination's world headquarters since it was established as an industrial school in the state of Alabama in 1896.
Church leaders also approved edits for the Church's mission statement that was voted by the Church's Executive Committee during the 2009 Annual Council. David Trim shared why it was important to make the revisions.
The Church's current mission statement has served the Church well for nearly 25 years, but we always review the mission statement. Each General Conference session, as part of the strategic planning process, in fact, we look at the mission statement again. In the past, the changes have all been relatively minor, and it was felt that after a quarter of a century, there was a need for a wholesale approach. And also, it was the first mission statement we designed, and it was rather long. And over the years, we've actually made it longer. It's now so long that people don't know it, people don't cite it. We wanted something that would be memorable, that every local church could use on its website, put it in its bulletin, that every member could know, so that every Adventist could identify with the mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Delegates recommended to revise many sections of the Church Manual, a document created 82 years ago to provide local churches with guidelines on how to operate in relation to denominational structure. The amendments modernise the language and make other changes, such as removing the word ordinance from references to communion service.
Adventist leaders participated in the Church's Global Day of Prayer for the ongoing Ebola crisis in West Africa. To help delegates understand the gravity of the situation, the president of the church in Liberia, James Gole, shared a report via video conference. Gole said that he would have attended the meeting, but decided to stay home following the example of Liberia's president during a recent gathering of Africa's leaders in Washington, and due to travel advisories from global health organizations and church officials. 16 Adventists are among the thousands in the region that have died from Ebola virus. World Church President Ted Wilson led the attendees in prayer and pleaded for members to continue their prayers beyond the dedicated Sabbath.
Although Global Adventist membership has continued to grow, the Church's secretary expressed dismay over the major loss of members. According to GT church membership has grown from 17.8 million to 18.1 million over the past year. Despite growth, fears the Church has lost focus on the nurture and retention of members. For the 10th year in a row, more than 1 million people joined the Church, but at the same time, a decade high of more than 800,000 people were removed from the books after dying, leaving the Church or disappearing. Also said 31.8 million people have been baptised over the past 40 years, while 11.4 million have dropped their membership or gone missing.
The Church's treasurer developed a report this week that showed the denomination's major financial changes over the past 2 decades. Bob Lemon highlighted a new trend by noting an increase in giving for specific projects, especially among young adults. Lemon also explained that while the Church has more than doubled from 8 million to 18 million, the World Church Headquarters operations and staff members has increased by less than 2%. Bob Lemon has more.
Well, we've found that over time, it's very easy to just add employees at the administrative level, and you can use up all the money, all the increases in tithes and offerings that come. Over the last 18 years, at the General Conference, we've only increased a net of 5 employees. And we've done that intentionally so that we can have more strength and more money and more pastors and more frontline workers, and also at the conference levels, because that's where we need the strength in the church.
The Church's second financial leader, Juan Prestol, noted that the World Headquarters contingency budget is less than 0.5%, underscoring the inaccuracy of a common misperception that Church's headquarters operates with great financial flexibility.
Coming up, World Church President Ted Wilson underscores the need for revival and reformation during his annual address.
I love to surf. I started surfing when I was a teenager. One day, I was out surfing. It was a holiday, it was the 4th of July, and the beaches were very overcrowded. The lifeguards had their work cut out for them. About halfway through the day, the lifeguards decided to put out the yellow flag with the black spot right in the center of it, which tells people no more surfing. The waves were extremely large that day, and so I came in and brought my board to the beach. I didn't want to stop surfing, even though we weren't allowed to surf anymore. So I went out and decided to body surf in these large waves. They were way overhead, as we would call it. So I went out anyways and started body surfing. Unfortunately for me, the waves were overpowering me and kept pounding me down into the surf, down under the water. And I began to start drowning. Suddenly, I felt a hand grab my arm as I was underneath the water and pull me up. It was a lifeguard. He had come to rescue me. He told me to grab onto the flotation device that he had brought with him, and he brought me into shore. I was rescued, and he saved my life. Did you know that you and I can be rescued from the power of sin over our life? That Jesus, just like that lifeguard, came to rescue us and to save us from our sin. That through the power of the Holy Spirit, we can be saved through the life of Jesus Christ.
Welcome back, and now for more news from the 2014 Annual Council.
Seventh-day Adventist Church President Ted Wilson, during his annual address last week, urged church leaders to stand by the Bible, even if its teachings are out of sync with widely held societal views. Wilson warned that Satan will use numerous tactics to neutralize the church's mission, including dissension, distraction, and deception. Underscoring the theme of revival and reformation, the church president urged members and leaders alike to seek to be filled with the Holy Spirit as the only guard against the devices of the enemy.
World Church President Ted Wilson recognized outgoing Adventist Chaplaincy Ministries Director Gary Council as he prepares to retire from his position. Council has worked for the ministry since 2005 and became director in 2008. Associate Director Mario Ceballos was nominated Sunday to become Director-elect for the Chaplaincy Ministries. Gary Council shared how the scope of Chaplaincy Ministries has changed since he became the department's director.
We have seen an acceptance of chaplaincy by the church in general to where it is viewed as an integral part of the ministry, and that's something we've worked very hard to achieve, a seamless Adventist ministry where a chaplain and a pastor are basically one and the same. That's good. The second thing is we've seen larger numbers of chaplains, not only in the U.S., we've seen a global chaplaincy developed. Now, it may not be on the same level as the United States. We really don't care because each country is different, has its different laws and the like, but there is a general acceptance, particularly by our younger pastors. They're wanting, they're interested, they're ready to be chaplains, and they're eager for training.
Church officials addressed the re-election of administrators during next year's General Conference session. Leaders prepared the more than 330 delegates to face the reality that they may not be asked to return to their present job. Church Secretary G.T. Ng encouraged delegates, who include officers of the 13 divisions and presidents of each of the 132 unions, to follow his custom at the end of each term by bringing a moving box into his office and thanking his administrative assistant for the time they worked together. Each delegate was invited to accept a miniature box, indicating their commitment to view themselves as stewards rather than owners of their ministry posts. The box contained a card with two choices: "I shall not be moved" and "It is well with my soul," with a check mark next to the latter.
GC session is an occasion when the entire body of Christ coming together to make decisions on the future of the church. And one of the agenda items will be about electing new leaders to various positions in the General Conference as well as in world divisions. So when they come to GC session, they should come with the confidence that God is going to guide the nominating committee in selecting the right kind of leaders for a critical time such as this, because we are living in a time when many signs are fast fulfilling, and we know Jesus is coming soon. So we need spiritual leaders to be put in place that can lead the church from strength to strength for the next 5 years.
Evangelist Mark Finley last week addressed leaders on both sides of the women's ordination discussion about their reaction if a potential vote next year at session is different than their own convictions. Finley's presentation was a study of how the book of Acts demonstrated how the church can remain united while resolving differences over deeply held issues. Finley shared how church leaders and members can relate to each other as the delegates prepare to discuss important issues.
I'm reminded of the words of Jesus where he said, "By this shall all men know that you're my disciples, that you love one another." Difference of opinion is healthy in a church. We pray about issues, we discuss them, we debate them, but we do it respectfully and in love. But when we decide together and move forward for a mission to win the world for Christ.
The week-long meeting of the denomination's Executive Committee kicked off with an appeal for attendees to focus on respectful diplomacy and healthy living. During the opening meeting of the 2014 Annual Council at the World Church's headquarters, World Church President Ted Wilson wished church leaders God's blessing over the business sessions and spiritual meetings. Lifetime Achievement Awards were granted to Harvard Professor David Williams, Associate Health Ministries Director Fred Harding, and Health Ministries Administrative Assistant Beth Pettit. Delegates also heard from 3 leading health experts, each of whom urged delegates to prioritise health-related ministry in their own regions of the world and make healthful living a personal priority.
Church representatives last week shared the region's most successful and unique initiatives to reach people in the world's largest cities. The initiatives were part of the Council on Evangelism and Witness report presented to delegates. Many of the evangelism efforts address the need to spread the gospel in cities and metropolitan areas populated with millions of people.
Church leaders this week presented the 2015 World Missionary Book entitled Health and Wellness, Secrets That Will Change Your Life. Seventh-day Adventist Church President Ted Wilson prayed over a display of the books, which will be used as a form of global outreach to spread the Church's health message. Wilson was joined on the stage with leaders from the Church's 13 world divisions. Leaders also announced the Church's next Health Impact Day is set to take place April 18 in 2015.
And now, here's a wrap-up of more events that took place during Annual Council. World delegates had a chance to welcome the first representative from mainland China in more than 60 years. The Youth Department shared its Follow Me Adventist movement, a ministry to nurture students who attend public colleges and universities. And leaders of the Ellen G. White Estate shared resources for children and youth, including an online game and a new Pathfinder honor. They also announced plans for the centennial commemoration of White's death.
And the list of business items from Annual Council continues. Delegates also approved preliminary support of the Seventh-day Adventist Church of North America's headquarters to move out of the World Church's headquarters if the division decides to relocate. Adventist Communication Director Williams Costa Jr. presented the anthem for next year's General Conference session. The Church's strategic plans for 2015 through 2020 were presented and approved, and the Adventist Women's Ministries Department announced the launch of their Bible for Women.
Still ahead, get a behind-the-scenes glimpse into Annual Council meetings.
But up next, learn how the Church's mission was highlighted through daily devotional messages.
We were a group of women outside the city gate by the river at a place of prayer. Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth from Thyatira, was also there. 2 men came along and started to speak to us and asked to join us in prayer. We later learned that they were Paul and Silas. The Lord opened Lydia's heart to heed Paul's message. She and all the members of her household were baptized. Another day, Paul and Silas were on their way to a place of prayer. They were met by a female slave who had a spirit in her that could predict the future. She earned a lot of money for her owners by fortune-telling. She followed us and shouted at us. This was disrupting, and so Paul ordered the spirit out of her. When her owners realized that their chance of making money was gone, they dragged Paul and Silas to the authorities, and they were put in prison.
At around midnight, these 2 very positive prisoners named Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. The rest of us were listening to them. Suddenly there was a violent earthquake and the prison shook. All the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, saw all the doors open and drew his sword to kill himself. He thought all the prisoners had escaped, but Paul assured him and shouted that he should not harm himself. The jailer called for lights, rushed in and lay in front of them, trembling. The jailer accepted Jesus Christ, and his whole family was baptized.
Welcome back. And now for another look into the 2014 Annual Council.
For this year's Annual Council, church leaders decided to begin the committee's meetings with a devotional thought that emphasised the Adventist Church's mission. On Sunday, the Church's representative to the United Nations, Ganoon Diop, provided an in-depth look into what it means to be an Adventist. On Monday, evangelist Mark Finley shared why the Three Angels message is still relevant. The Church's top health leader, Peter Landless, on Tuesday examined how Adventists can minister to people experiencing hopelessness. And on Wednesday, Associate Ministerial Secretary Robert Costa emphasised the importance of outreach.
And finally in the news this week, we would like to present a behind-the-scenes look into Annual Council meetings that take place outside of the general meeting of the Church's Executive Committee. For example, members of the Steering Committee met daily at 7 a.m. to decide the final agenda for the daily meetings. When the delegates dismissed for lunch, some had a chance to hear reports from representatives of the Church's divisions and several entities. A program was also designed for spouses of delegates who traveled for the meeting. And earlier this week, leaders of the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, Loma Linda University Health, and the Adventist Church met to discuss communication strategy for the ongoing Ebola crisis in West Africa.
And now we'll transition to our weekly features. Last week we reported how you can keep up with Adventist Church President Ted Wilson online. For this week's Tech Corner, Andrew King shares an exclusive look into the Presidential Perspectives blog.
Have you ever wanted to find out more current events about what's happening with the Seventh-day Adventist Church President? Well, we have a blog that shares all kinds of information, and it's called Presidential Perspectives. If you go to perspectives.adventist.org, you'll be able to find this website. When you arrive, you'll see a video from Adventist Church President Ted N.C. Wilson welcoming you to the site. The main purpose of the website is to bring together in one location all the news, videos, and sermons from the Adventist Church President. You can read news stories from all around the world, watch videos, and even read the sermons that Elder Wilson has given while he's been President. The videos include interviews, special presentations, and even some videos of sermons when they've been recorded. As a world church, the President needs to travel to different locations for meetings, special events, and presentations. And you can read all these news stories on this one webpage. We hope you find this website useful, and please share this resource with your family. Again, the address is perspectives.adventist.org.
For this week's social media segment, Angela Taipei sent the following report for October 11th Special Day of Prayer for the Ebola virus.
This week in social media, we saw individuals, families, churches, communities, and the world church come together in prayer for the Ebola crisis. Images came in from all around the world showing your support in prayer for those affected by Ebola. Together, we prayed for protection for the healthcare workers, caring for the sick, church members and leaders as they minister to those affected, those who have lost loved ones to this disease, a medical breakthrough in treating the Ebola virus, and that God will put a halt to the spread of this virus. Due to the growing impact that Ebola has had in West Africa and now around the world, the Adventist Church invited members to pray daily around the world at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. for the Ebola crisis, and to set aside October 11th as a special day of prayer. As of October 8th, over 8,300 cases of Ebola had been confirmed in West Africa, leading to over 4,000 deaths. The Adventist News Network confirmed in a report this week that those Ebola deaths include 16 Adventists in West Africa. During the annual council meetings, the delegates were presented with an additional way to support a coordinated effort to help address the needs in West Africa. You can also help this way by visiting hope4.fondly.com/Ebola-crisis, as seen on your screen. Also this week, the Seventh-day Adventist Church Twitter account live tweeted the annual council meetings with the hashtag GCAC14. If you're interested in the minute-by-minute details of what happens during a meeting like this, check it out at twitter.com/AdventistChurch or search the hashtag GCAC14.
And now let's turn to David Trim for a look at Adventist history. This week, learn about the organisation of the Missouri-Kansas Conference in the United States.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. On October 12, in 1895, missionary G.H. Weber arrived in Valparaiso, Chile, to become the first superintendent of the newly organized Chile mission. On October 14, 1844, Charles Fitch died at the age of 39. A Presbyterian pastor, Fitch was one of the leaders of the Millerites and made his mark on the history of prophetic interpretation by applying the passage in Revelation 18, "Babylon is fallen, come out of her, my people," to the Protestant denominations who were then resisting the Millerite proclamation of Christ's soon return. Previously, Protestants had always applied it only to Roman Catholics. Fitch died 8 days before the great disappointment of October 22. 82 years later, on October 14, 1926, a new Adventist college opened at Kanomura in Chiba Prefecture, Japan. Known as Nihon Saniku Gakuin, its first president was American missionary Andrew N. Nelson, and it had around 20 students. It originally only accepted male students, but today is coeducational and has 250 students. On October 16, in 1870, during the first camp meeting in the U.S. state of Kansas, held at Pleasanton, those attending organized the Missouri-Kansas Conference with R.J. Lawrence as president. It consisted of just 2 local churches at that time, but a number of isolated Sabbath keepers as well, one of whom had traveled 270 miles in order to hear James and Ellen White speak. That was This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching A&N. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, join our global conversation on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can connect with other Adventists worldwide and find links to more stories, photos and videos. Visit Facebook/Adventist News, Twitter/Adventist Church and Instagram @Adventist Church.
Our good news for this week comes from 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 5. The passage says, "May the Lord lead your hearts into a full understanding and expression of the love of God and the patience endurance that comes from Christ."
That's our program for this week, and remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.